of my skull against the cold marble floor echoed through the house like a warning shot. But no one rushed to help me. Instead, through the haze of throbbing pain and blurred vision, I heard her heels click toward me, slow, satisfied. "You tripped on your own heels," my stepmother, Victoria, said coolly, her lips curling into that snake-like smirk she always wore when she thought she'd won. Behind her, my dad stood stiff in his designer shirt, arms folded, jaw tight. Not from concern, from frustration. "Clean it up before the guests arrive," he said flatly. Like I was nothing. Like my blood pooling next to the granite kitchen island was just spilled wine on his fancy floor. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I tried to move, but everything pulsed. My head, my stomach, my chest. Their voices faded into each other. Then I saw him, Damon, my husband. He stood silently in the hallway, half shadowed behind the arch leading to the den. He didn't make a sound, but I saw the phone in his hand, saw the red glow of recording, and the look on his face, not shock, not fear, purpose. He wasn't just witnessing, he was documenting. And somewhere deep inside my broken body, that thought anchored me. They didn't know. They didn't know they were already losing. 2 hours earlier, I'd been told to stay out of sight until the fundraiser ended. Victoria was hosting a pre-gala brunch at our estate. The mayor, 2 news anchors, and some celebrities I didn't care to recognize were coming. And according to her, I didn't fit the aesthetic. I was dressed in a simple blue dress. Modest, clean, elegant, nothing flashy. But in her eyes, I was never enough. Not tall enough, not refined enough, not their kind. Never mind the fact that I was the reason this house even existed. I married Damon Richardson, the quiet, brilliant tech investor they now clung to like social ladders. He gave them everything, and they treated me like dirt beneath their red-soled heels. Victoria had given me a chore list. My father had signed off on it. But Damon had pulled me into his arms that morning and whispered, "Don't do anything they say, just watch." I didn't understand it then, but I do now. Because when Victoria tossed that tray of juice glasses near my feet and smirked, waiting for me to slip, she wasn't being careless. She wanted this. The fall, the mess, the scene. What she didn't expect was the hidden camera on my necklace, or the second camera in Damon's pocket, and definitely not the video he was quietly forwarding to her ex-husband's legal team. The man they feared, the man with more power than both of them combined. Victoria didn't know she'd just stepped on a landmine, and the timer had already started ticking. As the paramedics arrived, finally called by the caterer who walked in and screamed, my father was shouting about the mess, demanding someone mop up the blood. Victoria was rehearsing some fake story about me fainting from not eating enough. I was wheeled out, but I didn't feel weak. I felt something else, a fire, because I'd seen the look in Damon's eyes as the ambulance doors closed, and it said, "Let's end this." By the time I opened my eyes in the hospital room, Damon was already sitting beside me, holding my hand. His thumb brushed over my knuckles gently, but his eyes were storming. "You're safe," he said, "and this time you're not going back there until everything changes." I tried to speak, but my throat burned. "You don't have to say anything," he whispered. I already sent it. My heart jumped. I blinked, confused. He leaned closer. "The footage. I sent it to someone who'll make sure they never touch you again." Victoria had one fear, her ex-husband, Harvey Caldwell, a cold, calculated corporate juggernaut and the man who built the very fortune she leeches off of now, through alimony and threats. He hated scandals, hated weakness, and most of all, hated being embarrassed publicly, which is exactly why Damon sent him the raw, unedited footage, with timestamps. Harvey wasn't the kind of man who replied with words. He moved in silence, and he moved fast. By the time I was discharged that night, Victoria's face was already plastered on private social blogs with a headline that read, "Socialite caught, mocking daughter-in-law's fall, while husband secretly records." The footage hadn't leaked publicly, yet, but Harvey made it clear through his attorney, if she doesn't leave the house within 24 hours and disappear from the social scene for a year minimum, the tape goes live. She folded, faster than I expected, But my father? He wasn't scared of headlines. He was scared of losing control. The moment I returned home, the air was thick, silent, tense. Victoria was gone. Her shoes, her perfumes, her art, all removed. But my father stood near the staircase like a wall, arms crossed, his face tight with restrained rage. "You think this wins you anything?" he growled. "No," I said. "I'm not here to win. I'm here to tell you. I'm done." "You're done?" he scoffed, laughing bitterly. "You think your husband's money makes you powerful? You're still that little girl I raised, weak, afraid, unwanted." Damon stepped beside me before I could speak. "Number. She's the woman I married," he said calmly. "And if you ever speak to her like that again, I'll do more than leak videos. I'll take down every crooked deal you've ever buried in your company's books." My father's face dropped for the first time, not because of the threat, but because of the truth behind it. See, Damon wasn't just a tech investor. He was the silent majority shareholder in my father's company, something we kept private. But now, Damon was done hiding, and so was I. I didn't shed a single tear as I walked into the dining hall that weekend for my fundraiser, the event Victoria originally claimed I wasn't elegant enough to host. Now, the entire guest list showed up for me. The mayor greeted me. The socialites took selfies with me. My stepmother's former friends whispered nervously from the shadows. And my father? He stood by the bar, stiff and silent, watching the daughter he discarded become everything he swore she couldn't be. Damon leaned over during dinner and whispered, "Should we show them the second clip?" I smiled. "Not yet. Let him sweat." Because this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming everything they tried to steal from me. My dignity, my voice, my value. And this time, they'd have no idea what was coming next. 3 days later, I sat alone in my car outside the very house I once called home. It felt surreal, like watching my past from behind a glass wall, close enough to see every crack, but far enough to never touch it again. Until my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "I know what they did to you. Meet me. 11:30 p.m. The old greenhouse. Come alone." I stared at the screen, heart thudding. Old greenhouse? The one behind the estate? No one used it for years. Except, when I was young, I used to hide there after Victoria's cruel lessons. It was my safe place, until even that became off limits. I didn't respond. I just drove. The greenhouse was dusty, abandoned. Moonlight slipped through broken panels of glass, casting eerie shadows across the floor. And then I saw her, a woman, slender, older, wrinkled around the eyes, but familiar. "Ms. Rena?" I gasped. She was the housekeeper who raised me when my mom passed, the one Victoria fired overnight when I was 15. No goodbye, no warning. "I saw the video," she said softly, and I cried. Tears pricked my eyes. "I always knew they were breaking you," she whispered, "but now the world sees it too." I stepped closer. "Why now? Why contact me?" She pulled out a small leather notebook. "This belonged to your mother." I froze. She pressed it into my hands. She kept everything in here. Names, dates, transactions, secrets. And this is what Victoria and your father feared. I opened it slowly. Every page was a puzzle piece. Untraceable wire transfers. Hidden accounts. A property listed under my name. One I never knew I owned. It was like finding a buried map. One that didn't just reveal truth. It revealed leverage. The next morning, I handed it to Damon. He spent the day poring over every page with his legal team. And that night, he said only 5 words. "They're going to lose everything." I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because part of me still mourned the father I wished I had. But that version of him never existed. What did exist was a man who let his wife stage accidents, manipulate guests, and verbally humiliate his own daughter, all in the name of control. And now, control was slipping. Fast. At the next board meeting of Caldwell Sloan Corporation, my father's pride and joy, I walked in with Damon by my side. And the moment I stepped through the doors, whispers started. Not just because I was there, but because Damon had just officially made me the second largest shareholder, only 1% behind my father. And in his briefcase, he held documents, proof of financial misconduct, and an anonymous letter from Ms. Rena, detailing years of mistreatment and tax evasion. My father's face paled. "This is extortion," he hissed. No, I said, lifting my chin. This is justice. His voice trembled for the first time. What do you want? I stared straight into his eyes. I want you to resign. He laughed. I'll never. The vote's already in, Damon interrupted, holding up his phone. And it's unanimous. My father looked around and slowly realized no one stood with him, not a single hand. Even his oldest allies had abandoned him, not out of loyalty to me, but because they smelled collapse, and they weren't going down with him. As security escorted him out, I stood still, strong, unshaken. He passed me without looking back, but I didn't need to see his eyes, because for the first time in his life, my father had finally learned fear. Got it. I woke up the morning after the board meeting, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Light, not because everything was over, because something new had begun. The mansion was quiet, not that performative, artificial hush Victoria used to force during her ladies' brunches, but a genuine calm, no cold glares, no sarcastic footsteps echoing down the marble stairs, no commands disguised as requests. She was gone. Victoria had packed her bags and left the estate overnight, escorted by her lawyer's assistant. The video footage Damon captured, plus the deeper financial evidence from my mother's hidden ledger, had made her too nervous to fight. She didn't leave out of shame. She left because of fear. She knew if that second video ever surfaced, the one where she pushed me, not just mocked me, her reputation wouldn't just be damaged, it would be erased, and she couldn't afford that. My father, though, he stayed. He didn't say a word to me when I passed him in the hallway, just stood by the window in his blazer, staring out like the house no longer belonged to him, because it didn't. The estate was mine now, legally and financially. A hidden clause in my mother's will, triggered by any provable abuse, handed her share of the property straight to me. Victoria's stunt in the kitchen had sealed that fate, but this wasn't just about a house, it was about a legacy. That evening, I walked into what used to be Victoria's private sitting room. Her portraits had been removed. Her perfume no longer lingered in the air. In its place sat Miss Rena, my childhood housekeeper, the woman who used to sneak me cookies when Victoria would force me to skip dinner as punishment. She had returned, this time not as a servant, but as our foundation's very first director of community outreach. I almost didn't recognize this place, she said gently, her warm hands wrapped around a cup of tea. It doesn't feel haunted anymore. Because the ghosts left, I said quietly, then smiled. We both looked up when Damon entered the room, holding a folder. I just got confirmation, he said. The foundation's paperwork is official. We're good to go. I took the folder in my hands. Inside was the birth of something bigger than me. The Elena Grace Center, named after my mother, was now real. A sanctuary for women who'd been pushed aside, tripped in kitchens, told they were less, worthless, too emotional, too much of a burden. Ms. Rena smiled. She'd be proud of you. I looked out the window, toward the garden where I used to sit alone as a girl. She'd want me to keep going, and I would. But first, there was one final event I had to host, an event Victoria once claimed I'd never be fit for, the annual family fundraiser. This year, the invitation had my name at the top, and the entire city was coming to see me. The evening of the fundraiser arrived like a storm, calm on the surface, but full of silent electricity. Every detail had been curated with precision, not for aesthetics, but for meaning. From the white gardenias on the entrance table, my mother's favorite flowers, to the choice of music softly playing from the grand piano in the foyer, everything was intentional. This wasn't a celebration. It was a reclamation. The ballroom shimmered with golden light, and the chandeliers above bathed the space in warmth. Guests arrived dressed to impress. Politicians, entrepreneurs, journalists, donors, and former socialites. Many had once laughed behind their wine glasses when Victoria whispered stories about how lost or embarrassing I was. But now they waited to speak with me, to take photos with me, to be seen with me. I stood at the top of the staircase overlooking the crowd, wearing a deep sapphire gown that caught the light with every step. Damon stood beside me, quiet, steady, proud. His hand found mine just before we walked down into the sea of whispers. Remember when she wasn't allowed at these events? Someone murmured, not realizing I heard them. I didn't react, because that version of me no longer existed. The speech was scheduled for 8:45 p.m. sharp. I walked onto the stage as the lights dimmed, the room falling into a hush that felt deeper than silence. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me, but I didn't feel small. I felt centered. I stepped up to the podium and began, not with an introduction, but with a truth. There was a time when I believed the only thing I'd ever be good at was staying quiet. People shifted in their chairs. I was told to walk softly, to speak only when spoken to serve tea, to clean up messes that weren't mine. I believed for too long that if I was just good enough, maybe, just maybe, I'd be seen. I paused. The quiet deepened. But kindness isn't weakness, and silence isn't consent. I glanced at Damon. He gave a small nod. I stand here tonight not because I finally became good enough for this room, but because I realized this room was never worth shrinking for. Scattered applause grew quickly into something stronger, not polite, not forced, genuine. I continued. We are launching the Elena Grace Center tonight, not just to honor my mother, but to protect every woman who's ever been made to feel invisible in her own home, who's ever been mocked for her tears, dismissed for her dreams, or left on a cold floor while others walked away. A few women in the front row wiped their eyes. We will build a space where no one has to whisper to be heard, where healing doesn't come with shame, where power is shared, not taken. By the time I ended the speech, the room rose to its feet, not out of obligation, but because something in them shifted too. Later that night, I stepped outside to the garden, the one I used to escape to as a teenager, when Victoria's voice got too loud and my father's silence felt like stone. I stood alone for a while until a voice behind me cleared its throat. It was him, my father, wearing a plain gray suit, no tie. He looked smaller than I remembered. I didn't know if you'd let me in, he said. I didn't, I replied. He offered a faint smile. Damon did, didn't he? I nodded once. He believes people deserve a chance to see what they destroyed. We stood in silence, the garden lights casting soft shadows on the brick path between us. I watched your speech, he said after a while. You're not her. I frowned. Not who? Not your mother, he said. You're stronger. That pierced something in me, something raw. You didn't protect her, I said slowly, voice low but steady. And you didn't protect me. I know, he whispered. I lived a long time believing silence was strength. I realize now it was just fear. He looked down. I don't expect your forgiveness. Then it's good, I said gently, because I'm not here to offer it. I turned to walk away, then paused. But I hope you find a way to live with the truth, because I'm finally living with mine. He didn't follow. He didn't argue. He just nodded and sat down on the old garden bench as I walked back into the house, where my guests, my future, and my name were finally, fully mine. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at my office, wrapped in soft brown paper, no sender. Inside was a small, black notebook, the same one Miss Rena had originally given me, but now tucked inside the back cover was a folded note in shaky handwriting. You built something beautiful. I watched the ribbon cutting on the news. I never had the courage to speak up. You did. You broke the cycle. You won't hear from me again. But you should know, she would be so proud of you. Dad. I stared at it for a long time. Then I placed the note in a drawer and locked it away. Not out of anger, but out of closure. Because I had no need for his words anymore.